Western Balkans are again in the focus. I'm Kenan Ćosić from Oslobođenje, Sarajevo. The president of Republika Srpska, Milorad Dodik, recently, a few days ago, met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Given that an arrest warrant has been issued for Dodik in Bosnia and Herzegovina with an international warrant pending Interpol's decision, how does NATO view this meeting in the context of regional stability? And second question, additionally, how do you assess Dodik's stated position that police of Republika Srpska would prevent his arrest in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Well, clearly it's up in the first place to the Bosnian Herzegovinian presidency, the three-member presidency, to take charge of the country. As I explained to them again when I visited now 3 weeks ago, I know some of them are somewhat irritated with the role of the High Representative, Mr. Schmid, and of course other aspects of the Dayton Agreement. But in the end, if they take control of the country, the three of them, then they really rule the country. And that is my urge. For NATO, I've made very clear we cannot accept a security vacuum in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We don't want any destabilization there. And of course, when it comes to Dodik, the president of Republika Srpska, and all the court orders and everything happening there, we expect him to basically accept when the independent judiciary is ruling, that he accepts that and that he then behaves accordingly.
All right, gentleman in the fourth row here.
Gabriel Dominguez from the Japan Times newspaper in Tokyo. There'll be a meeting between the North Atlantic Council and the Indo-Pacific 4 countries tomorrow. Could you tell us what topics will be on the agenda and what new ways are being considered to deepen cooperation between NATO and these countries?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I'm really looking, and also to my bilateral meeting with the Japanese foreign minister. And this is important because we cannot look at at NATO territory in isolation. We know that all these theaters, the Indo-Pacific, the Euro-Atlantic, what is happening in the Middle East, this is all getting more and more interconnected. Look at what is happening in Ukraine with North Korea, China and Iran getting more and more involved. And of course, the fact that China is rapidly building up its own armed forces, having towards 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030. So what we will concentrate tomorrow on, I think, no, I expect even, is that we will deepen the cooperation. We will make it more and more and more practical. That means working together on issues like defense, industrial cooperation, exchanging experiences and views, etc. We are learning a lot now from this terrible war in Ukraine. Capturing those lessons through JTEC, the Joint Analysis Center now opened in Poland, which is a joint Ukraine-NATO initiative. We have to make sure when we work with the Indo-Pacific 4 partners that we capture those lessons, that we learn from them, including Australia and New Zealand, but of course also Korea and Japan. And I think that is important. And the good thing here is that it is getting from the meeting is the message more and more to content, to meat on the bone. And that's extremely important.
All right. The blonde woman in the blue dress.
Hi, Alexandra Filipenko, The Breakfast Show, originally Russia, but in exile in Lithuania. For the sake of international security, who should control Greenland?
Denmark is, of course, not controlling Greenland, but it is part of Denmark, in the sense of being part of the Kingdom of Denmark, I should say. It is an independent territory, but part of the Kingdom of Denmark. But of course, your question has to do with this whole issue of how to defend the Arctic, the high north. And this is not only Denmark through Greenland. This is also Iceland, Norway, Finland, Sweden, and Canada, and the United States. 7 NATO allies, the 8th country being Russia, but the other 7 all being in NATO. And we are working more and more closely together because we know what is happening there. We know that the Chinese are making use of the sea lanes opening up. We know that the Russians are more and more arming that part of the world. We know that we have an issue, for example, a very practical issue, that we do not have enough icebreakers. It seems a detail, but it is not. It is important. And on all of this, we are working more and more closely together, NATO getting more and more involved. And I think that is very important.
All right, the gentleman in the fourth row, white shirt.
Thank you very much, Rickard Husu, Finnish national broadcaster YLE. My question is on defense spending. This week, the Finnish government announced that it will increase national defense spending to 3% by 29. What's your view on this decision? Do you expect similar pledges already before The Hague? Would it be beneficial? And additionally, Finland has also decided to withdraw from the treaty against landmines. What is the broader significance on this for NATO's defense, as also the Baltics and Poland has made similar decisions? Yeah. Thank you.
So when it comes to the Ottawa agreement, that obviously is for individual allies to decide on, so I should not comment. I took note of that, but I'm extremely happy, of course, with the extra spending Finland has pledged. I think even if you figure in the cost of conscription in Finland, it brings you up to 3.5% by 2029, if I'm correctly informed. So it is really a surge, and we see this all over NATO now. Look what Germany is doing, opening up $500 billion extra in defense spending. The Europeans coming up with 800 billion extra. Finland, indeed, but also the announcements by Denmark, by Sweden, by the Czech Republic, by so many others. I mean, I'm now forgetting probably one or two, so sorry for that. But also that many countries who are not yet at 2% are more and more getting to a place where they want to commit to 2%, potentially even before the summit in The Hague. All these rumors are now floating around. And I think this is really a surge. Already we have seen defense spending on aggregate since 2017 in Canada and the European part of NATO going up by 700 billion. But the last couple of months, the numbers coming in it's really staggering. It is impressive, and it is needed because we have this Russian threat, we have the Chinese build-up, we have this connection with North Korea and Iran, so we have to defend ourselves, and we can defend ourselves now. But if this surge would not have happened, and hopefully will continue to happen, we could not defend ourselves in 5 years, and that is why this is so much needed.
Thanks. Terry.
Back here, sorry.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Terry Schultz with NPR today. I was touched that you began the press conference by mentioning Bucha. And your predecessor visited Bucha and said that what happened there was basically an unspeakable crime and that those responsible should be brought to justice. Since then, the U.S., which was contributing personnel and funding to investigations into Russian war crimes, alleged Russian war crimes like in Bucha, they've withdrawn that funding and that personnel. What is your position on that? Do you also believe that those responsible for these atrocities must be brought to justice, that there must be accountability for these crimes to have a Europe that is stable in the future, that these cannot be these crimes must be accounted for, and would you like to see the U.S. continue supporting that effort?
Well, obviously, those who are responsible for Bucha and for so many other crimes have to be brought to justice, yes. But when it comes to the other part of the question, our focus now has to be on making sure that we can end this war in a way that Putin will never, ever try again to capture 1 square mile or kilometer of Ukraine or of a part of NATO territory. And that a ceasefire / a peace deal in Ukraine will be lasting, will be enduring. That has to be our main focus at the moment. So I'm not going to comment on every policy decision within every ally every day. That's impossible for me. But your general question, absolutely yes, we have to bring those responsible to justice. And we have to really focus on making sure that this war ends in a way that, again, as I said, it will never happen again.
All right, and just behind Terry, Max.
Thanks a lot, Secretary General. Donald Trump is about to announce tariffs that will hit both foe and friend of the US. I don't want you to comment specifically on the tariffs that are coming, but are you afraid that this sort of trade war that it could spark will have an impact and undermine the alliance?
Well, you know, the alliance is laser focused on making sure that we can defend our NATO territory. And there are increasing threats from the Russians, from others. That's what we are focusing on. And that means that when it comes to fiscal policy, when it comes to, for example, this whole issue of imposing of tariffs, this is really a matter for national governments. And you rightly assumed that I was not going to comment.
All right, down here in the center, third row.
Hi.
Hi.
Mr. Secretary General, I wanted to ask about Moldova. So recently, 3 Russian diplomats were expelled from Chisinau after it was demonstrated the involvement of the Russian Federation embassy in the transportation of a convicted Moldovan member of the parliament to the Transnistrian region. And in reply, Russia says that serious consequences will follow. And Moldova has parliamentary elections soon, and as we all know, Moldova is also a target of cyber attacks. So can we expect an evolution of relations between Moldova and NATO in order to protect Moldova from the foreign interferences? Thank you.
We have a strong cooperation with Moldova, with Chisinau, with President Sandu. She visited me in December. We know each other very well, this role, but also in my previous job in the Netherlands, we worked very well together. And obviously, wherever we can help, and we do a lot together, but whatever we can do more of, we will do so. It's not always wise for me to tell you everything, keep our enemies a bit guessing, but you can be assured there is a close cooperation.
All right, and just behind her, the gentleman in the fourth row. Yes.
Thank you for the floor. Dmitry Shkurko, National News Agency of Ukraine. Secretary General, Russia officially denied the US proposals for ceasefire in Ukraine, saying that it does not meet the core Russian demands. But we all remember that the core Russian demands are just withdrawal of NATO troops to the borders of 1997. Why, just curious, what kind of response could we hear from NATO side? Thank you.
But listen, you will hear many crazy things coming out of Putin and out of Russia, including their demands for a peace deal and whatever. I would not take it all too seriously. Of course, we have to look into it always and have to react to it, but I mean, this is also how he tries to negotiate. And I am, as I said, I commend President Trump for breaking the deadlock, for getting the discussion going, for getting this initial 30-day ceasefire on the energy infrastructure, steps taken about on the Black Sea. Of course, we hope for more. I know that the American administration is working day and night to get it done. We are getting updates, being informed, etc. And then it is important on the European side that countries like the UK and France are thinking about the situation post a ceasefire / a peace deal. But you know, if I would comment on every media outing of Putin, particularly when it comes to what the Americans try to establish in terms of a ceasefire and a peace deal, is not helpful. But you will hear many strange things coming out of Moscow.
All right, the woman just 2 away from, yes.
The woman is Alexandra von Nam with DW.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hey. Yesterday, Serbia and a NATO ally Hungary signed a new defense cooperation agreement. Was the NATO alliance consulted beforehand? Do you condone it, given the situation in the region and Serbia's ties with Russia? Thank you.
Well, we see in the region, of course, more of these bilateral, trilateral agreements. We have also Albania with Kosovo and Croatia, and of course we have, and then this one is coming up. I mean, this is outside. This is NATO is not part to this, so this is not concerning the alliance.
All right, the woman in the third row in the black.
My name is Nastasia Mikhailova. I am from the Insider, Russian media in exile. And you told sometimes yesterday that the war should be end, but how it could be end now? And what do you think about Russian threats for European Union? And do you have a plan about rearm? Thank you.
Well, of course, the best way to end the war is for the Russians to leave Ukraine, and then it can end very soon. But that is not going to happen, I'm afraid. So that's why it's good that the Americans have now started this process. And that was important because somebody had to break the deadlock. And I always assumed if President Trump would be elected that he would try to do so, and he has done so. And I think that is good. And we completely support those efforts. And we have to take it from here. And we have to make sure that whatever happens, that when there is a deal ultimately struck and or a sustainable ceasefire is ultimately organized, that it has to be clear to the Russians that they cannot do this again, that this has got to stop. That's why it has to be durable, it has to be lasting, and this is exactly what the Americans are aiming for, what we all are aiming for, including making sure that the whole of NATO territory stays safe.
All right, the woman in the front here.
It's Nita Dobroshi from Koha, Kosovo. During your recent visit to Kosovo, you mentioned the possibility that NATO's potential engagement in Ukraine could lead to discussions about its presence in Balkans. Given the region's fragile situation, security situation, highlighted by attacks in KFOR troops in 2023 and Banska and Iberlepens attacks 1 year later, approximately, what implications could this have to regional security in general and for Kosovo in particular?
I'm not sure I made a connection between Ukraine and a potential peace deal on Ukraine and then potentially security guarantees being needed for Ukraine. We know there are initiatives now being developed by European allies like the French and the Brits are doing with others. And I did not connect that to the situation in Kosovo because I think KFOR is important. EUFOR, the EU force in Bosnia and Herzegovina, is important. We work closely together. I think the security situation in Kosovo is very close to our heart. We have to make sure that the situation since 1999, now much more stable, can continue. And when it comes to, indeed, Banska and also the attack on NATO forces, both in 2023, that the Serbs will work on the accountability. This is what I discussed with President Vučić on the phone, but also when we had dinner here in Brussels 2 weeks ago.
All right, the woman in the green sweater.
Thank you. Bin Nachong from Yonhap News Agency, South Korea.
Hi.
I'm sure you are aware of the political situation in South Korea, so I have 2 questions. Why do you think it's still crucial to have cooperation with South Korea? And secondly, actually, we're waiting for the impeachment ruling this week. So my question would be, will you be sending invitation to South Korea, whoever the leader is then, regardless of the outcome of this week's ruling? Thank you.
Well, of course, the judicial process within the Republic of Korea is very much to the Republic of Korea. I can only respect whatever outcome there will be. I'm happy that the foreign minister is visiting this foreign ministers meeting. I will have a meeting with him in half an hour. I'm looking forward to that bilateral meeting. And then, of course, he will participate tomorrow in the foreign ministers meeting. And when it comes to The Hague and the summit and the choreography, we still have to take final decisions on that. So no news on that, but that is not about Korea. That is more generally how will we engage, yes or no, and in what format with our partners.
And the row just in front of her, the woman with the glasses.
Thank you. Kim McCrail from the Wall Street Journal, and I'm sorry to hide behind the cameras. The position of the Supreme Allied Commander Europe is traditionally held by an American. There have been some reports, though, that the U.S. is considering giving that position up. I'm wondering if that happens, what would that mean for NATO? And what would that mean for the U.S.'s influence in NATO?
Well, these are what-if questions. And I've seen, other than some of these rumors and reports, indeed, in your newspaper, I've not seen any concrete proposals on this. So I don't want to react on what-if questions. Chris Cavoli being the EUCOM commander, the commander of the US forces here in Europe, but also being the Supreme Allied Commander. That is a tradition we have since the start of NATO, since Eisenhower, for good reasons. But let me not comment on what-if questions.
All right, the woman standing.
Thank you. I'm Azatrous from Tunisia. I really would like to notice that there is a group of Arab journalists from the Middle East and North Africa within this group. Secretary General, I really appreciate your comments on Ukraine. You said that you want to pursue the war criminals in justice, and your positive message to Ukrainian people because of the Russian aggression. Knowing that tomorrow Gaza might be on the agenda. So are you concerned about the situation in Gaza? Is there any single step to stop the bloodshed, to save children in Gaza, to stop the killing, the daily killing and the starvation of people there under the eyes of the world? Thank you.
Of course, we are following the situation in the Middle East, and particularly in Gaza and Lebanon. And your question is very much to Gaza. We follow that very closely. At the same time, this is a question which is really being addressed at the level of the individual allies. They are navigating the crisis, so there's no role for NATO here. When it comes to NATO and the close cooperation with the southern neighborhood, including with Tunisia and other countries, Algeria and Morocco and Mauritania and Egypt and Israel and others, this is about security cooperation. How can we help each other? How can some, like in Mauritania or and so, by the way, Jordan, a very important partner there, like we're doing in Iraq. How can NATO help to make sure that we apply our knowledge to help these countries to build up their own armed forces, their own security forces, etc. But when it comes to Gaza itself and the situation there, it's up to individual allies to navigate that situation.
All right, I know that we'll have more questions than we have time to answer, but we do have a few more minutes. So let's come to the woman in blue here on the aisle.
Hi, good afternoon. Isabel Schäfers, German TV, ZDF. I have a question on defense spending. We know that Donald Trump wants 5%, but only for the allies, not for the US. On this special topic, but also more general, do the European allies need to do basically everything that the US requests now in order to keep the US within NATO?
Well, first of all, as I said, let's celebrate the fact that we have added in aggregate by now several hundred billion since 2017, and that the last couple of months, including your country, I mean, you guys are leading the way, the Germans, the $500 billion extra in defense spending is staggering. What we will have to do in the run-up to The Hague is to assess, and this is a process we have in place in NATO, the defense planning process. We have to assess exactly what are the targets we need to achieve. Based on those targets, which gaps do we have? We have already identified a few. For example, the fact that we need more long-range capabilities, that we need more air defenses, that when it comes to our land forces, our armies, we need to invest more there. Including in the way they are outfitted, etc. So on all these issues, and logistics and command and control, etc. So there will, when you look at the aggregate number, and it is not finalized yet, we will finalize that whole process early June with the defense ministers, you can assume that, as I said before, that you will have to spend considerably north of 3%, to reach these targets, to close the gaps, to make sure that we can keep ourselves safe in this part of Europe. And that is driving us at the moment. But whilst we are working on those targets, we see these staggering amounts of money coming in. And that is important. That means that Europeans are stepping up. And that's crucial because of the threats from Russia and the increasing threats from China, but also Iran and North Korea.
All right, staying in the same row, the woman in green.
Hi, I'm here.
Sorry, yeah.
Hi, goedemiddag. Lise Hesselund from Danish TV2. I would like to return to the question regarding Greenland.
Yes.
I hear your point on the necessity to have a larger presence in the Arctic, but we have a situation where one NATO ally is threatening another NATO ally with taking control of its territory. So My question is, why won't you go into that discussion? Why is that? And also, isn't there a credibility problem here when we have this situation, we have these threats, and you won't distance yourself as Secretary General to these threats? Normally, we also hear similar things coming out of Russia, but why don't you want to go into this specific debate? Thank you.
Because what I want to do is to have us focus on the issue at hand. And the issue at hand here is the defense of the Arctic, and that is much broader than Greenland. Of course, Greenland is part of the Arctic, but as I said, Denmark, through Greenland, is one of the 7 countries, the US itself, Canada, Iceland, Norway, Finland, Sweden. They are all part of the High North, and we have some serious issues to address. With the Chinese using the sea lanes, with the Russians rearming the region. And I want us to concentrate on that issue and be very much focused on this, because there is a real issue there, which goes really beyond Greenland, it's only Greenland. Of course, Greenland being important, but it is in conjunction with the other 6.
All right, I think we've got time perhaps for one more. The gentleman here in the front.
2 more, yes. No,
Darko Čačić, Beta News Agency from Serbia. Secretary General, you said that NATO is not part of bilateral agreements in the Balkans, but can you tell how does NATO view the recent agreement between Croatia, Albania and Kosovo, which has sparked strong reactions from Serbia, particularly President Vučić President Vučić's claim that it means opening an arms race in the Balkans. Given that Croatia and Albania are NATO member states, what implications does that agreement have on regional security and stability?
Well, of course, the stability and the situation in the Western Balkans is very much a concern. That is why NATO is present in both Kosovo and also in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And of course, we have 5 allies, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Albania, Croatia and Slovenia on the Western Balkans. And we are working very closely together. But please understand that for me as Secretary General, I should refrain a little bit from commenting on every development in every part of the world, including on the Western Balkans. This is really for individual allies to decide. There are many more of these bilateral and trilateral agreements between allies. I know that, for example, the Netherlands and Belgium are working together on many issues. And of course, that is different from what you are addressing here. I know, and you are addressing an important subject, but still, I think I should not comment myself.
All right, you said one final question? All right, one final question. Gentleman in the blue here.
With the glasses. No.
Thank you.
No, and then
okay.
Thank you.
You're the boss.
Thank you. Barzan, reporter from Kurdistan 24. The mission of a global coalition force in Iraq to end by 2026, next year. You are, as a NATO, are you going to end as well, or you are going to stay, like the training forces? And the second question, back to February, during the mission conference in Germany, you have had a meeting with the president of the Iraqi Kurdistan region. Could you tell us something about that meeting? Thank you.
Yeah, that was a very positive meeting. We know each other very well in my previous role, and it is important, I think, to continue that conversation. So I was very happy to have that opportunity in Munich. Of course, I cannot disclose what we discussed in detail, but it was a very cordial meeting, re-establishing our relationship. And when it comes to Iraq, of course, we are there at the invitation of the Iraqi government, helping Iraq to develop its armed forces and develop its security forces. Of course, when there are changes to the overall security infrastructure, because, for example, the Americans potentially taking down some of their troop levels there because of the discussions they have with Iraq, that could have an implication for the NATO mission in Iraq, and then we will navigate that with the Iraqi authorities. So you can be assured that we will always be in front of that.
All right, and then very final question to the gentleman in the glasses and the blue shirt.
Yes, thank you very much. Michel Kerris, NRC Amsterdam.
And now you have to ask a nice question.
That's a nice question. Okay, okay. So, There was quite a few issues have raised considerable concern about the cohesion in NATO. Think about Greenland, think about the direct contacts between the US and Russia without Europe being present. How would you characterize the atmosphere in your house at this moment?
Well, as I said last week in Warsaw, I know there has been some tough language. I know that there have been allies, for example, on this side of the pond, being worried about the long-term commitment of the US to NATO. And I was in the White House, but before I went to the White House, we had President Macron there and Prime Minister Starmer, and on so many other occasions. The Americans have stated again and again, we are committed to NATO, we are committed to Article 5. This commitment comes with a clear expectation, the expectation that on this side of the Atlantic and Canada, we will spend more, commit that we will really deliver on the 2%, and then move upwards because of these gaps we still have in this part of NATO to deliver on all the targets. And that's the process we are in the middle of. And in the meantime, the hundreds of billions are rolling in as we speak. And that will continue, no doubt, over the coming days and weeks is my expectation. And we have to do this because of the Russian threat and because of the increasing China threat. So let's not be naive about that. But I'm absolutely convinced this alliance is there to stay with the US. Their commitment is absolutely clear. We want to do more together in the Pacific even, and we want to work on many issues, including in the Arctic, and I think that is also positive.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. We'll be back on Friday afternoon, so if we didn't hear from you today, hopefully we'll get you in then. Thank you so much.
Great, see you later this week.